Island View Drive and Area Ratepayers Association is proud to sponsor this Meet the Candidates meeting. We thank all candidates for putting your names forward and for attending this evening to present your platforms on issues facing Georgian Bluffs. We also thank all the residents, both present this evening and as well online in the future, who will take in this meeting as it is being recorded. Finally, I'd like to thank Michael McLuhan for being our moderator this evening. So at this point, Michael?
Thank you, Ken. I'm always of the persuasion that I should be thanked afterwards, and that way, if I really mess it up, you have a choice, you know. So, we're going to get started. I'm just going to wait for the last people to sit, and actually, I'll start right now. We live on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, represented here by the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation and Neheshiniming First Nation. We also acknowledge the Métis Nation of Ontario, whose people are very well represented in the area. And we thank all of these original peoples here for their ongoing stewardship and care of the lands. And we affirm that we are all treaty people with all of the responsibilities that entails. Good evening. Washrooms, the first item on the agenda. There are two. Okay. There is a washroom on the first floor. If you enter from the back door of the church, it will be in front of you on the left. And there's a second one downstairs. If you come in the front door and go straight ahead, down a few steps, and continue to the back past the kitchen, that's bearing to the left, it's a door on the right. It's fairly confusing, but there's only one way to go down there. Just a few words on process before we get underway. This is not a debate. Beginning with the mayoral candidates, each participant will have a maximum of 4 minutes to introduce themselves. They don't have to take 4 minutes, but they've got up to 4 minutes. An official timer will track the 4-minute time allotment, and a bell will sound when that time is up. After the introductions, we will move to the question and answer period. Please understand, no questions or comments will be taken directly from the floor. You are given the opportunity to submit a written question for the candidate. Raise your hand for someone to collect your question. Questions will be screened to eliminate duplicate and inappropriate questions. Thanks to Dave and Ken for collating the questions. You may direct your question to a specific individual or to all of the candidates. Time for the responses will be limited to 2 minutes each. A bell will ring when that time is up, and following the response to the question, any candidate desiring to respond will be given the opportunity to do so. Candidates this evening will speak in alphabetical order. This meeting will be recorded and made available online on the Island View and Area Ratepayers Association website for any who would like to view the candidates' responses later. It's unfortunate that I have to announce that Isaac Scholdice was unable to attend this evening. He really wanted to. And a quote, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be at the all candidates meeting on September 27th. I am a registered nurse employed at the Wyerton Hospital working in the emergency department. I have not been able to find anyone to replace my shift on the 27th due to our continuing battle with staffing. If anyone would like to talk to me or get to know me or my stance on subjects pertaining to the township of Georgian Bluffs, I can be reached at any time by my cell phone or via email. And I believe, is there a list of contact information at the front, or should I get that?
It'll be down at that same table.
You can get that from the table at the back there, or at the front there, depending on how you see that. I will be at the Shallow Lake meeting on October 12th. Darn good reason for not being here. Without further ado, we will begin with mayoral candidate Dwight Burley. This isn't moving now. There you go.
I'm sorry.
I got it.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dwight Burley, Mayor of Georgian Bluffs. I again ask for your support to be elected as your mayor for the next term of council. As we continue to deal with tremendous challenges and changes, Georgian Bluffs needs experienced leadership and stability. As your mayor for the past 4 years, deputy mayor for 3 years, and over 25 years as municipal councilor, I bring the required knowledge to bring Georgian Bluffs forward in a positive and meaningful way. I'm married to a wonderful wife, have kids and grandkids. I'm retired from my commercial industrial business over 40 years. I'm very proud to be a resident of Georgian Bluffs. The township has issues like other municipalities. The first priority for me will be to make sure council and staff have been brought up to speed on all issues and get the proper training to bring good governance and best practice to our decision-making process. We have pressing items we need to address as a council very early in our council term. For example, short-term rentals. Continue with our bar adjuster discussions. Climate action, working with the upper tier for the best practice and solutions. Council's job is to set policies and bylaws for our staff to implement and follow for the best benefit of ratepayers in our municipality. Listen to and address all concerns from our ratepayers. I have a brochure at the back outlining many items I want to address in this next term of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I look forward to any of your questions that I can answer. Thank you.
I'm now turning it over to Sue Carlton. She's going to speak from here, so she doesn't have to do it with the stairs for now.
Good evening, everyone. As you all know, I am Sue Carlton. I would first like to thank the Island View Area Drive Ratepayers Association for hosting this meeting this evening. I have lived in Georgian Bluffs for over 40 years. My husband and I raised our family here, and our son is now raising his family here. I think it is the communities in Georgian Bluffs that are our biggest asset. We live in an area where we know and care for our neighbors. I see the role of mayor as being that of a team builder, ensuring that all council members are heard in a respectful manner. Our role as municipal councilors is to bring differing opinions to the council table for discussion and to determine the best direction to be given to staff to implement those decisions. This means we will not always agree. We will not always share the same opinion, but the end results should be what is best for our municipality. All of council needs to know that their opinion or idea will be heard, will be valued, will be respected. As council, we need to continue working with the Township of Chatsworth to find a workable solution for the biodigester that best benefits both Georgian Bluffs and Chatsworth. There are many options available, and staff are currently working on bringing a report back to the Joint Biodigester Board for consideration by both councils. Council works best when it has input from residents. The current Climate Action Committee includes residents whose knowledge and expertise are essential to completing a workable solution for the township. This is an example of how residents can have input and assist the township in creating a plan that will be of benefit to the larger community. This plan will be necessary in the future to enable the township to apply for government grants and funding for various projects. We also have a newly developed Recreation and Trails Master Plan that has not been fully implemented yet. We need input from our residents to be sure that this plan continues to grow and reflect the developing needs of the township. We need to clarify the timelines for a strategic plan and update our official plan, work that is already in progress. Council needs to listen to our residents and to value the input that is received and then act on that input. I was first elected as a councillor in Georgian Bluffs in 2014, and then acclaimed as deputy mayor in 2018. This term, I'm running for mayor. I offer 8 years of experience on Georgian Bluffs Council and 4 years on Grey County Council. I have served on the former standing committees for finance and recreation and parks, plus 4 years on Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, which included the Indigenous Relations Committee, the Grey Sauble Foundation, and forestry committees. As deputy mayor, I am a member of the Joint Board of Management for the Biodigester and the Inter-Township Fire Department. As a member of Grey County Council, I have served on the Economic Development Advisory Committee, the Tourism Advisory Committee, the Agriculture Advisory Committee, and am chair of the Climate Action Task Force. I chose committees at the county that I felt we lacked the resources for at the township, but needed to have input on to continue to grow and develop Georgian Bluffs. I've also served on the Mental Health and Addictions Task Force. I have a personal reason for being on this committee, as I have a nephew who I wish had reached out for the help he needed. I don't want to see others experience this if I can find a way to help. I promise to be a leader who works to bring council, staff, and residents together in a positive manner that will create a community that we can all be proud to call home. I'm asking for your vote to make me the next mayor of Georgian Bluffs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sue. Our next speaker is going to be Scott, and as he's coming up, I just realized I was asked by the gentlemen that have to look at your questions, please print legibly. Seriously, it can be a problem. Okay, so we'll bring up Scott Cato now.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Scott Gatto, and I'm running for mayor of the wonderful township of Georgian Bluffs. I'm glad to see this kind of a turnout and the interest in the future of Georgian Bluffs here, along with thanks to the Ratepayers Association for putting this group together tonight so that we can get our views across to the people of the township. Thank you, Mike. Thank you to the Ratepayers, and also thank you for everyone here that stepped up and is running for council. I've lived in Georgian Bluffs for 35 years. I've been in the agriculture and the construction industry, along with my wife, Jen, and our 3 kids, Eben, William, and Maya. I think the most important question anyone here tonight can ask me, Scott Gatto, why are you running for mayor? I'll come back around to that question. I see the mayor's responsibilities in Georgian Bluffs and their duties to be very, very different than things have been done in the last couple of terms. I have the interest, I have the vision, and I have the ability needed for change in Georgian Bluffs. We need a strong leader to create opportunities that are within the grasp if we just take advantage of every opportunity for growth and stability that we have in front of us. There are endless possibilities for rural and agricultural residents to expand and increase businesses that we typically are now not taking advantage of. This list goes on and on. I see a real need for council to become current and up to date with regulations and policy. There's a real they have the responsibility and the duties of an elected official, which includes attendance in person at meetings. I feel this is extremely important for everyone to be involved, to be educated with the important discussions that have real input and impact on real people. There is a number of issues currently in front of our municipality, such as the failed biodigester, the inability to not only acquire but retain staff for our daily operations within the municipality. We need to bring back simplified approach to dealing with approval systems such as planning and development, expansion of infrastructure for things such as natural gas, high-speed internet, etc. I see these types of things a win-win for the situation for everyone in Georgian Bluffs. And it allows the residents and the business people within Georgian Bluffs to be viable and be able to compete with our outer urban areas. Affordable housing, seniors residents, infrastructure of water and sewer before development, climate action that actually works. These are just a few of the other things that I do have on my agenda. I see a missed opportunity for council as a whole to be engaged and knowledgeable when it comes to the financial and fiscal operations within the municipality. Residents have been through some tough times in the last couple of years, And now, with the inflation rising and other problems within our business opportunities, I'd like to see a rate freeze on property tax for 1 or 2 years. We need more oversight within the current staff and the council with our fiscal management. I know we can find ways to save money, and I strongly feel that we have an obligation to taxpayers to do just that. So coming back to the original question, why are you running for mayor? First of all, I want to see more accountability in all aspects throughout the municipality. See council not only engaged and committed to the responsibilities of those elected officials. This requires not only strong leadership, but common sense and commitment to our municipality. And that is why I'm running for mayor of Georgian Bluffs. We need change, and we need it now. So please, on October 24th, mark your ballot, Caddo for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And that concludes our mayoral candidate's introduction, and we will now move to the councillors and or the candidates for councillor. And as I mentioned before, we have 7 of the 8 here. We're doing it in alphabetical order once again. So I will first bring up Chris Azevedo. Is the podium mic active? It is not active now.
Does that work? Perfect. Hi everyone, my name is Christopher Azevedo, and I'd like to ask for your vote for councillor and represent you for the next 4 years. This request is one I don't make lightly, and if you give me this opportunity, I will show you what it means to properly represent you, the residents and ratepayers of Georgian Bluffs and the beautiful communities that we live in. I am married with 4 lovely children to my beautiful wife, Christina, and they are here with me tonight. Christina has given me her full support in this commitment that I am making to you. I bring a wealth of knowledge, experience, accountability, and transparency that we need and deserve from our members of council. My goal is to ensure that council makes the right investments in our communities and that we grow in a fiscally responsible way that respects the ratepayers of our township. I want to ensure we continue to invest in infrastructure and services that support our elders, our youth, and our next generation. I want to plan a future where our kids are able to learn, grow, and be provided with economic opportunities within the community that would keep them connected here for years to come, just like me and my family, who have been in this township for 4 generations. My wife and I own a small business here in Georgian Bluffs that has been in our family for 50 years. I have an engineering and technical education, and I have had the privilege to work for the last 20 years, both in the private and public sectors. My current role in the public utility sector is one where I ensure transparency and fiscal responsibility is maintained for ratepayers across Ontario. My education and work experience will be well served on this council. There are many major issues affecting the residents of Georgian Bluffs, such as our tax rates, our water bills, high-speed internet accessibility, Airbnbs, and our impact on the environment, just to name a few. In order to properly support the residents, we need a council that is diverse and brings all feedback from the residents, from the community, I should say, to the table, but one that is also open-minded to others' ideas and suggestions. We need someone who is cooperative and constructive and will do what's in the best interest of you always. I pride myself on being that person and on making evidence-based decisions through consultation and collaboration with others. I commit to work hard and put in the time required no matter what. I bring a fresh perspective and new and creative ideas to the table, but more importantly, an open mind. These personal attributes will ensure a prosperous future for Georgian Bluffs while still able to achieve and maintain a low tax rate. I commit that I will always be accessible to you and respond to your inquiries, concerns, and issues. Effective communication is vital to ensure you are all kept up to date with what's happening in the township and to ensure your voices are heard. Thank you for your time, and thank you to the Island View Drive and Area Ratepayers Association for providing me with this opportunity to speak to all of you.
Thank you, Chris. Kathy Coburn would be up next, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kathy Moore-Coburn, and it's been my honor to represent the ratepayers of Georgian Bluffs this past term of council, and I hope to be re-elected next month. One of my past election promises was to divest our municipality of the airport, which was not financially feasible for a small municipality. We sold the airport last year, saving our municipality significant tax dollars on a yearly basis. That money can now go towards other areas of need. As for the biodigester, we're currently exploring options for its operation that are more realistic. To date, it has been significantly underutilized. Expensive maintenance and upgrades will be necessary. Though an environmentally responsible notion, it must either be supported by the larger region or temporarily decommissioned until an arrangement is made with a different owner. I will push for a firm decision this next term of council. I want to see council commit to responsible development practices, taking into account existing and future infrastructure needs. A master servicing study is underway with a report for council coming early in the term. Our approach to development needs to be more proactive and data-driven. Council has to look at existing systems that are substandard, such as the water service in Potawatomi Village, and fix it. We have developed a master recreation and trail plan this past term, and those objectives now need to be implemented. Our parks and facilities need upgrades. And decisions about trail usage will be made. Council and staff will be collaborating with community members and groups to ensure our plans meet the needs of all trail users. This past term, grant money was secured to renovate the Kemble Community Center. Public consultation is now underway, so this facility can be comfortable and inviting, accessible and multi-purpose, with a completion date set at the end of 2023. A couple of unresolved issues are the usage of our shore road allowances and problems associated with short-term accommodation with absent landlords in residential areas. The new council will examine the current data and relevant information to determine the best solutions to these problems. Over the past 4 years, I've had the pleasure to serve on several boards and committees, including the Inter-Township Fire Department Board, the Board of Directors of the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, its Inglis Falls Management Committee and Indigenous Relations Committee, and the Climate Action Committee. I have been a consistent voice on council for transparency, engagement with residents, better customer service, and recreational opportunities for all. I will continue to call out violations of our code of conduct and ensure we all work in an environment free of toxicity. I will continue to voice commitment to the council as a whole process, as opposed to unilateral governance that undermines a council's ability to be effective. I have taken my role of councillor seriously. I roll up my sleeves and I do the work. I remain committed to integrity, honesty, and respect. I will remain an advocate for our residents and a responsible policymaker. I hope to have a seat at the council table again next term. If re-elected, I will work diligently on your behalf so Georgian Bluffs continues to be an amazing place to live. Thank you to the Ratepayers Association, and thank you to all of you for coming this evening.
Thank you, Kathy. Next up is Colin Correa. Just making sure.
Hello, my name is Colin Correa, and I'm running for councillor of Georgian Bluffs Township. I would like to start by thanking everyone for attending this meeting so that my colleagues and I have an opportunity to let you know who we are and what we can offer the community as public servants. Currently, I'm a woodworking teacher at St. Mary's High School in Owen Sound. In other words, if any of you have received a wooden toolbox as a gift in the last 4 years from one of our students, you can thank me after the meeting. I'm a volunteer firefighter in the community, which I was happy to get onto in April of 2021. There is a theme what I enjoy doing: teaching, fire service, and karaoke. All of those aspects result in me giving me the opportunity to enrich the lives of those I interact with. You might be rolling your eyes right now at karaoke enriching people's lives, but if you help me win this election, I'll be singing so loud, you'll know what I mean. My childhood memories are here in Georgian Bluffs, which is why I made this choice to make Oxenden my home in 2018. Before that, I lived in Alberta, where I was teaching and doing volunteer firefighting in 2012, when I couldn't find work in Ontario. I left my family behind and went to Alberta and didn't know anyone. I didn't realize it at the time, but making a sacrifice ended up being the most extremely beneficial decision in my career. I am constantly doing things in my life to try something new which will make me better. I set myself up for success while setting a goal which I always have wanted to achieve. In this case, I've always wanted to run for public office since grade 10 civics class. When I was 13 years old, 3 of my friends wrote a letter to a city councilor that we needed a skateboard park. In the letter, we mentioned that we were getting kicked out of parking lots or we'd get robbed by neighborhood bullies, and we just wanted a place to skateboard where we didn't have to worry about getting in trouble. We were thrilled when our parents received phone calls inviting us to meetings where my friends, Mel Lassman, and I would discuss the possibility of a skateboard park. In 2001, it was built, and I had this feeling of doing something for the common good. And to this day, the park is enjoyed by many people of the Willowdale community. This feeling of collaborating with multiple people in a municipal government setting was absolutely thrilling and rewarding as I was enriching the lives of other skateboarders. Reflecting on it now, the people who probably used it last weekend weren't even born when we worked to have this built. Think about that. I can be a part of a decision to enrich the lives of people who don't exist yet. Here I am 24 years later, telling you I'm going to do my best to do something for this great community. I wanted to address what we will do about short-term rentals, being able to support the farmers who support us, solving the municipal water problems in Potawatomi, recruiting more doctors to the area, evaluating the recreation on trails master plan, and exploring all the possibilities in regards to the biodigester. I know I will do my best job representing all parties involved with different opinions on some of the issues. I moved to this area instead of other places in this province because of the spirit of the people I want to aspire to be like. For example, I know a plumber and electrician who lost his leg in a motorcycle accident and still continue to work the trade as well as go on volunteer fire calls. I know a woman who is a single mother, raised 2 incredibly wonderful daughters while working and going to school, studying to upgrade her career. I know a man pushing 80 who has a garden he maintains just on his own, so beautiful that my students go to take grad photos there. Let me inspire you like I have been inspired by them. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Next up is Tobin Day.
Hello, it's a real pleasure to be here tonight. I first of all want to thank everyone who's behind me and who organized this event. I've been listening to the radio a lot lately and listening to CBC talk about municipal elections across Ontario and how many municipalities don't even really have elections because the candidates are being acclaimed into the positions without anyone running against them. And today we have a really healthy debate or conversation going amongst many candidates, and that's wonderful to see. Democracy is alive and well in Georgian Bluffs. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Tobin Day, and while I didn't grow up here entirely, my roots are here. Some of you probably know my father. In fact, I know some of you do. He worked for Parks Canada, and that's why we came here. We used to joke that Parks Canada was a lot like working for the military, where we travel around and live in different parts of the country. Here, there was Bruce Peninsula National Park, and my father helped create it. He was the government's quote-unquote secret weapon. If you snowmobile in Bruce Peninsula National Park, that's because my dad listened to the locals, and he decided that was important to fight for, and it remains the only national park where that is permitted. I'm not running because of my father. I'm not running on his past accomplishments. I'm going to talk about why I make a great candidate for council to Georgian Bluffs as well. But that's my education when I was growing up, watching that happen, and that influenced a lot of who I am today. I've been a teacher for about 20 years now, mostly in Blue Water, but before that overseas and in Toronto. I hit the time of declining enrollment here in Blue Water, so I've taught in many schools, Wyerton to Lions Head to Grey Highlands to Owen Sound, mostly in Wyerton and Owen Sound, which is great because that's where most of our students end up going. And by teaching in many schools, it really fostered my sense of adaptability and flexibility and being able to adjust to new changes, including a career change should I be elected to council. I'm a quick learner, I'm really motivated, and I like to understand the topics that I'm teaching or working in politics about deeply so that I'm making good decisions for anyone who I'm representing. When I originally started thinking about running for council, I thought about three major issues. I thought about the doctors in our region, and I know that doctors in healthcare is a provincial mandate, but I also think that when municipalities and provinces work together, that's when things are more beneficial for the constituents in an area. So I would work with the physician recruitment committee to make sure that Georgian Bluffs is an attractive place to future healthcare workers. And there are a few of them out there, so we have to make sure we look great. Farmland was another thing I thought about. We are losing about 319 acres per day. And we need to make sure that we classify our soils and our farmland so we can identify which are the ones we need to protect the most. I also thought a lot about climate change, and those who know me the best will know that that's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. But to jump ahead, there's so many other things I have learned about since I've been working on this election. The Trails Committee needs to be put together so all stakeholders have a voice in what happens to Georgian Bluff trails. We need to follow through and make sure we honor the delegates who spoke to Georgian Bluffs Council about short-term accommodations. We need to make a decision about the biodigester and pick one of the 8 options that have been proposed. I lean towards collaboration and ensuring that the biodigester is usable, but I will admit I haven't been on council and I need to see what's realistic as well. Thank you so much for your time to the volunteers and everyone who's making this possible tonight.
Thank you, Tobin. Next up is Mike Smith.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the Ratepayers for putting this on. Very much appreciated. My name is Mike Smith. Born and raised on the peninsula. Many jobs here. Currently, I'm a realtor. I'm a member of the Bruce Peninsula Sportsmen's Association. I have been for 37 years, and I'm currently the assistant hatchery manager there. We stock 150,000 rainbow trout and 50,000 brown trout in Culpeboys Bay yearly. So conservation is something that's very, very important to me. Leading into that, I do live in Oxenden now with my 2 daughters, age 7 and 9. They do wear me out. I promise I will have time for you, though. Being in real estate has given me the opportunity to not only meet great people in this municipality, but get to see all parts of it. I've also heard all their concerns. I'm hearing concerns of people that are moving to the municipality. What we need to do, first of all, is solve our short-term rental problem. It's a very serious problem. It's probably the #1 thing I'm hearing out there. Water rates are another issue as well. The one thing we are losing, Tobin did touch on it, is farmland. That's something very near and dear to me. Lots of summers spent on my grandparents' farm on Zion Church. So we need to do our best to protect farmland. Workable farmland, that is. Once it's gone, it is gone, and we'll rely on somewhere else for our food. So climate change is something else that's a big deal. We need to be proactive as a council dealing with climate change, not reactive. If you're being reactive, it's too late. Being in sales all my life, the one thing I've learned is what helps you the most is listening. If you don't listen to people, you don't get anywhere. And one thing I will promise you, if elected to council, I will listen to you and I will have an open mind, and you can come to me with any of your concerns anytime. I will be available. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Ryan Thompson is next up.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Ratepayers Association and to all my colleagues here. Thank you to all of you for coming, a great turnout. My name is Ryan Thompson, and I appreciate you taking the time to get to know me. I grew up in the Wyerton area and built my house here following my graduation from university in 1996. I'm humbled and honored to have been a member of council for the past 18 years. I'm employed as a social worker in the child protection field, and I also operate a third-generation beef farm just west of Kemble here. I'm proud and grateful to be able to raise my family in Georgian Bluffs. I'm proud of our council's work over the last term. We've made improvements to our recreational facilities and meeting places, with more planned improvements to come at the Kemble Arena, making sure that we have a place for people of all ages to gather and meet and exercise. We've adopted the Recreation and Trails Master Plan, and we need to do more work on that. We've established a Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Committee, and this is a first step towards the development of a climate action plan for the township. We found a new owner, most importantly for the Wyerton Airport. That was a promise that I made at the last time that we needed to look for. Councillor Coburn raised that issue. It was critical that we divested the airport. We kept it in the community, but we removed from the tax base the operational burden that was just too much for a small municipality to shoulder. Despite this good work, there's much more for us to do. I like to continue to focus on our main role, the provision of core services, building good roads, maintaining good roads, enforcing our bylaws, adding new bylaws where they're necessary. I've heard people talk about short-term rentals. That's a really critical piece that we need to look at. Gathering garbage, waste diversion, and recycling, really critical issues for us to look at. We need to center around the most effective provision of these in the most cost-effective way. Our dollars being stretched so thin with costs that are thrust upon us. Another key focus of the next council will be to assess the function and the performance of the biodigester and make a sound strategic decision for the future. We need to consider all the information and evidence and make an informed decision about the future of this facility. Like the airport, it has an environmental upside, and the benefit to the community can't be argued, but it's just the operation of this is too much for a small rural municipality to shoulder alone. We need to look at a private enterprise or shared ownership that removes the burden on a small municipality like ours. You heard me refer to the Climate Action Committee earlier in my speech. This is a first step for our municipality. Climate change is upon us, and we need to make decisions that ensure a sustainable future for our next generations. We need to apply a climate lens to all of the decisions that we make. We need to ensure that our planning and decisions protect our source water, and that we have a stormwater plan that protects our lake and addresses flooding in some of our communities. In closing, I'm asking for your vote, and I take this request very seriously. Residents deserve good governance and transparent leadership from council members. I rely on collaboration with others and consideration of all perspectives in every decision. I believe that the input of every ratepayer in Georgian Bluffs is valuable, and I strive to be approachable regarding every matter. I believe that every ratepayer deserves this commitment. Georgian Bluffs is my forever home. I love the opportunity to raise my family in a community that manages growth and respects the rural values. It would be my distinct honor to earn your vote for another term on council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan. And finally, our last candidate for council is Rick Winters.
Good evening. My name is Rick Winters, and I'm running for councillor in this election. I've lived in the township of Georgian Bluffs since 1999 with my wife. We've raised 2 grown children who have now gone off to represent their respective communities as firefighters and nurses. I have a background in civil engineering and held the positions of sewage system inspector, construction estimator, director of operations, CAO, and a branch manager. These positions, along with my education, have given me the experience to truly understand the township's geography and attributes, as well as the needs and issues. I'm running for councillor as I have the ability and the mindset to collaborate with fellow council members and staff while representing the constituents of Georgian Bluffs with an open-minded, forward-thinking approach when considering all the matters and decisions affecting the municipality. There will be many important issues presented to this new council by ratepayers, residents, stakeholders, and staff. These will need to be addressed. These include the current state of the biodigester. I keep hearing about that. That's a common theme. It's time now to move forward with that. Short-term rental accommodations is something that needs to be looked at and dealt with sooner than later. It's affecting everybody's peace of mind, peace of quiet, property values. Meeting the objectives of the approved strategic plan. Implementing the recommendations contained within the Recreation and Trails Master Plan. I'm a firm believer that when we spend money on plans and studies, we should implement them and not put them on shelves. We need to look at future land development, service levels, water system sustainability is a big one, and climate action, just to name a few. As councillor, my priorities will include ensuring the lines of communication are open regarding discussions regarding services and contractual sharing. We need to spend more time dealing with our neighboring municipalities. I see that in the job that I currently have today. I saw it when I was a member of the municipality. We don't have enough discussions with the municipalities to share services that benefit both. I pledge that all the action items are reviewed. We need to get back to the time when council had action items listed on the council agendas. We don't want things to get lost and lost in the shuffle. They need to be addressed. They need to keep coming to the forefront. So every 4 years, we're not having these discussions. As a strategically minded, results-oriented individual that believes in honest, transparent communications and accountability, I will consider issues fairly and strive to make informed decisions for all residents, ratepayers, and stakeholders of Georgian Bluffs. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. That concludes the introductory part of this evening's agenda, and we are now moving on to questions. And the first question I have is for the three mayoral candidates, and I'm going to get to that in a sec. I just realized that we're allowed 2 minutes response for each question, and should you forget the question, don't be ashamed, just ask me and I will reread it rather than reread it in between everybody speaking. Okay, so the first question. Nicely typed out, I might add. Nice to read. A municipal mayor participates on several boards and committees as well as being on county council. How do you, Dwight Burley, and how would you, either of the two mayoral candidates, ensure effective communication and decision-making at those tables on behalf of council as a whole? So we'll start with Dwight.
Thank you very much for the question. I've been on county council for a good number of years. On the upper tier level, one thing everyone has to realize, when I walk in the doors at county council, I represent 96,000 people. When I'm in Georgian Bluffs, I represent 11,000 people in our municipality. There's many things in the upper tier which really directly involves with the lower tier. And I try to communicate anything coming back from county council to our municipality. We're very fortunate in this age we live in. We have a great internet service in a lot of areas where we can communicate that way. But I'm always open for any questions at all on the upper tier, and I can answer anything you ask me that. Okay? Fine?
Thank you very much, Dwight. Sue, you'll be next.
Thank you. When I was first elected on council, we used to have all the minutes come back onto the agenda. And that was from the standing committees as well as outside committees. And when those minutes came up, the chair of that committee spoke to them if there was anything of pertinence that needed to be brought forward. So that kept all the rest of council engaged and informed. And I think the same needs to happen with the information coming back from county council. It needs to be brought back to township council, anything that's pertinent that everybody should know about. In this day and age where the majority of all of our meetings are live streamed and can be watched online afterwards, I think it's an easy way for the residents to get the information. And if we only rely on residents reading the minutes, they're a very abbreviated version of what the information is. So I think hearing those pertinent details brought forward at a council meeting where people can hear and other councillors can ask questions would be a good way of keeping everybody informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And Scott Cato would be next.
This is Anya. Currently, I think it's really, really important for the mayor and the deputy mayor within the municipality of Georgian Bluffs to take all concerns, all interest, and take truly and commit it to the county. One of the things that we're going to be having at the county with committees and different things like this is the seniors cares living with. We had issues with Grey Gables and things like that in the past, where I don't think the proper information and the proper structure and the education of those people going to those meetings with the proper information. I feel the exact same way with the councillors and the way that the Township of Georgian Bluffs should operate when it comes to councillors being engaged and educated with the policies. And I feel absolutely no different than when it comes to the mayor and the deputy mayor and his representation of the needs of the municipality through the boards and the committees at the county level. They need to be educated and they need to be 100% committed to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Our second question is going to everyone, I believe. So we'll start with Chris Azevedo, work through the list and come back through the mayoral candidates. The Potawatomi water system is old and failing, yielding dirty water and poor pressure. What are your thoughts or plans to correct this situation? Chris Azevedo.
So that's a great question. So we need to look at the data and consult with the experts on what needs to be done and review.
I think this might be a better mic. Let's try that. It was told us better.
Yeah, we need to call on the experts to advise us on what needs to be done to fix that issue, and look at the recommendations as council and find a solution that works for everyone, that makes sense and is feasible.
Thank you. And Kathy Coburn would be next.
Yeah, thank you. The water situation in Potawatomi Village has to be fixed, full stop. And when we receive the results of the master servicing study, we'll know better how best to attack that problem. But certainly there are options. We can extend the water lines from East Linton. And we can engage in talks with the City of Owen Sound as well to see if there might be some willingness to extend their water lines to the village of Potawatomi. Either way, it needs to be fixed, and we need to do it this term of council. Frankly, it should have been done over the past 4 years, but it is imminent and it does need to be resolved.
Thank you, Kathy. Collins next.
Okay, I'm going to refer to some notes, so I'm sorry how this looks, but anyway. This area, Potawatomi, has one of the oldest municipal water systems in the area. They have poor water quality, and it's just simply not enough. There was a report presented to council October 2018 with recommendations for the next council to take action on. The recommendations included either making a deal for Owen Sound water or extending the East Linton system. Action has not been taken in the last 4 years, in part because there has been tremendous instability with the CAO's position or other staffing. So there's been staffing issues. And that's the reason why I believe that action hasn't been taken on this. So I really think that what we're going to have to do is just bring it to the attention of council and work together to either get Owen Sound water or extending East Linton. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Tobin Day is next.
Hello. It must be really frustrating having an insufficient water supply and struggling with something that is such a basic need in day-to-day life. So I have empathy for the folks who live in Potawatomi and know that it's something that has not been fully addressed in the last 4 years, and we really need to address quickly. So hooking into the Owen Sound water system or into East Linton are two possibilities that have been proposed that we can investigate and see which one works best in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Tobin. And just a brief note here, could you please stand when you're responding? Apparently, they can't see past the podium for the camera online. There you go.
Thank you for the question. Coming from Oxenden, where we do have clean drinking water.
By the way, this is Mike Smith. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It is the utmost important for residents to have clean drinking water. You're paying a premium for it. You deserve it. I am in favor of either the East Linton or extension from Owen Sound. If it hasn't already been looked into, it needs to be looked into right away, and this needs to be resolved.
Thanks, Mike. Brian Thompson.
Hi, thanks. That's a great question. So I will wear the responsibility for this to some degree on behalf of all the councillors that have been here. This isn't a problem that's existed since 2018. This is a problem that's existed since at least 2004 when I started. The challenge for us is we've been unable to come to an agreement with Owen Sound, and we've been unable to extend the water line. And I'll give you the straight goods on why that hasn't happened. We haven't been able to come to an agreement with Owen Sound because the two parties haven't sat down with a commitment to make an agreement. So it hasn't happened. People have walked away from the table and left it as it is. The reason that the East Linton, the extension sounds great, does sound great, somebody has to pay for it. So the people that are not getting the water haven't wanted to pay for it, and we've stumbled at every time that we've done a feasibility study. So it is a problem. It's been a long problem. I think what we need to do is look at a different way. The easiest answer in my mind is, based on what I know right now, is the extension and an agreement with Owen Sound. We have tried and we have tried, and the fault doesn't lie with Owen Sound or Georgian Bluffs. It's a shared responsibility. We need shared agreements, and we both have to keep coming to the table and working and working and working until we can come to an agreement. Failing that, because we can't come to an agreement on our own, failing that, we need to look at the water lines and all of the water treatment plants in our township. So we have a very uneven treatment of people on water systems. So some people pay a lot, some people pay relatively a lot less than that. So failing an agreement with Owen Sound, we've really got to get our heads together and figure out how we can provide water to all of our residents and do so in the most economical and feasible sense.
Thank you, Ryan. Rick Winters next.
I really believe that everybody's answered a portion of that question, but there is a $100,000 environmental assessment that was completed in 2018 that's been sitting on a shelf. There has to be willingness between council to sit down and initiate conversations with fellow municipalities. And when you initiate conversations with fellow municipalities, an agreement, both parties have to win. And if you're only going to the table and asking for something and you're not willing to give anything up, the negotiations don't go very far. I'm not saying that's the end-all to be-all answer for Potawatomi, but there are answers out there that are available. There's grant funding that's out there. It's not hard to apply for grant funding to get funding to keep the momentum moving for that. Potawatomi has been a problem for years. It's one of the only water systems that Georgian Bluffs has that doesn't really treat quality. It just treats bacteria. There's no storage facilities there. It's a huge issue, but it needs to be rectified.
Thank you very much, Rick. Dwight Burley is going to be the next responder here.
Thank you very much. Yes, council takes full responsibility for the Potawatomi Village water system. The system, when it was first put in, worked fine, but with environmental changes and so on, everything changed. With the Walken situation, we can see where we are now. We really only got two solutions for that water system. We have Aqua as our main company that looks after it right now. The system has always been safe. That's imperative for council. It is safe. Yes, the water's not very good quality. But what we have to do is that we have two solutions. We've done an EA study to extend the East Linton water system to there, and conversations with Owen Sound. The extension of the East Linton water system maybe not be feasible, cost effective and so on, but we can revisit that study since it's all done and see what we may do. Probably the easiest solution with the new council in the city of Owen Sound is to sit down and talk to these people. The only way it's going to work is any kind of negotiations. You need people to sit down, across the table, talk to each other. We have not been able to do that. Maybe there's another solution with that Potawatomi Village. Maybe we can work with the city of Owen Sound and bring full services there, sewer and water together at the same time. Maybe that would be more attractive to the city of Owen Sound to be able to hook onto that water system. It's a major problem, we realize that, and yes, it will be something that the new council coming in is going to have to look at it very quickly.
Thank you, Dwight. Sue Carlton is next, and she's going to be right here.
Thank you. I agree. Council has really fallen down in this one because we've known about this issue for a number of years. It's recently been brought to our attention again by the residents in that area, and we have to get that going. We've got 4 years ahead of us in this term. It's time to make that happen. Perhaps working with a new group of councillors in Owen Sound might help with the change in the election. I think we really have to push for that because I think bringing water from the East Lytton system would be cost prohibitive unless we can get everybody out 30th Street and on up through the Brook area and such to be willing to tie onto that system as well. And from some people I've talked to out in that area, they say, no, we don't want to pay for water. We've got a well. We're good with what we have. So I think the Owen Sound solution looks like the best one. We have to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Scott Kettle would be next.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure how much more we can add to this. I think we've had enough people talk about this, but one of the things that I think nobody's made clear here is that when it comes to water and sewer and those kind of issues within the township, this is a payer-per-use system. It's not similar to the roads where the money can be put in by taxpayers and put in the road systems throughout the township. Infrastructure and that kind of stuff has to be dealt with the payer-per-use. Very similar to garbage, you're paying to get rid of garbage. So that's one of the reasons why this has become such a problem and financially not feasible. Unfortunately, I can't see in any way or any form that the people that are hooked to this water system are going to be able to afford or to start to spend the kind of money to extend the East Lytton water system. We have basically one option for this. We talked about this 4 years ago. It was 4 years before that. It's 4 years before that. And there's a number of other issues within the township that we're going to be talking about in 20 years because of poor planning and management here. So we need to work with the outside people around like Owen Sound. We need to start to get into conversations where we give and we take. We all have to work together. And the municipality has no choice but to start working with Owen Sound, and Owen Sound is beneficial also to them to work with us. Those kind of things are the only way that we're going to save money and get out of these problems in the future. I really don't want to be sitting here in 4 years from now talking about this exact same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. This next question is the first one directed to an individual, and the rules of the road here are that should other councillor candidates or mayoral candidates wish to respond to the question, they can do so after the initial response. Each response is limited to 2 minutes. This question is directed to Scott Catto. In April this year, Georgian Bluffs Council voted to remove garbage collection services for 43 homes on Hawthorne Crescent, Ironwood Way, and the additional estimated 39 future homes in this development. Service has been provided for a number of years in the form of pickup on the municipal street, McLeese Drive, and this ends in November. 6% of the taxes paid by all residents of Georgian Bluffs are for garbage collection and disposal. The current council has denied access to these services despite residents paying for them and requesting that they be continued. If you are elected, will you work to amend or create a bylaw to restore this service to these taxpayers, as I said, directed to Scott Catto?
Okay, they could have made that question a little bit shorter, but that's okay. Basically, if elected, I believe I'm going to have a ton of this kind of stuff come to me, and yes, I will be going back on all of those type of things and seeing why and what has been done. If I'm elected, that's my job. It's that simple. And if someone within the municipality is going to come to me, I'm going to look into it. It's that simple. That's all I can say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Does any other councillor, or Dwight is next?
Thank you for that, Scott. Down in this area in Cobble Beach, it's known as the Hollows. They formed a condominium group when they made this with the developer and the people. The condominium group, part of their condition was they would allow them to build smaller roads, not up to standard like George Bluffs roads are. They'll look after their own sole pickup and their own garbage. So what happens is, very simply, is that George and Bluffs have to follow the agreements that are set in place. The planners and everybody sat down, sounded like a great idea. Now here we are. These people have to try and bring the garbage out to the road until November, and then we are out. The condominium group has to get together and they have to put an RFP out to hire their own garbage contractor to pick up the garbage. It can be done, but saying that, I'm not saying that we can't sit down. There's 4 condominium groups down there. I think they're forming one board. There's one board. There's no reason why we, as a council in George Bluffs, can't sit down with these people and see what can we do to help the situation. George and Bluffs are following the guidelines that's put together by the planners, Grey County, and the owners of the property, McLeish's. We have followed what we have to do. It's a condominium group. They formed it. They knew what they're doing. At least they were supposed to when they made that decision.
Thank you, Dwight. Did anyone else want to respond to that question? Going once, twice. Next question. This one is for the mayoral candidates. Once Kemble Community is built, that must be Kemble Community Hall, I'm sorry, is built and renovated, will you support budgeting for sports equipment and games, etc.? I'm going to start this one with Sue.
Thank you for that question. That's an interesting thought, to provide the sporting equipment and such. I know at one time the municipality had roller skates that were used at, I believe, Kemble and Shallow Lake every Friday night. I would certainly support that. Having the kids and adults get out and be active would be an interesting concept. I actually think that as part of our community centers, I would like to see an area outside that is playground equipment with a walking, running track around that, and adult outdoor fitness equipment around that, so that adults and children can all go to the same area and have a workout and a playtime at the same time. So I would certainly support looking at a way to provide equipment for the children to get them out and keep them active. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Scott, you'll be next.
I would agree with Sue on that. I would say yes, we need to get our kids out. We need to get even the adults out and getting more exercise and having fun and being part of the community. Yes, 100%. You always have to look at those kind of things with sports and different groups. I would say my approach to going towards that would be to actually sit down and have a couple of open town hall meetings and find out what the people want to do with it. Where's the interest? What groups are showing interest in using it? You can't go forward unless you're going to know how you're going to spend your money, what you're going to spend your money on. And if we had some community get-togethers to say, hey, this is what we want to do, then I would support that 100%. Thank you.
Dwight is next. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott and Sue. Just so everybody knows here, I agree with both Sue and Scott. But I'm 100% behind the Kemble Arena. And I'm glad to see we're finally getting it going. With more public meetings in it to come up with the concepts, see where we come from. I believe 100% in supporting any kind of sports equipment for that facility when it's done. There's many ways we can work together through grants or whatever, but how that would work out and what would be, I don't know. Maybe inside and outside, I don't know. I do know that I would support it 100% to help supply sports equipment to that facility.
Thank you very much, Dwight. We'll move, unless one of the councillors, okay. We have Ryan Thompson wanted to respond to that question. So,
I'll be quick. I think that what we need to do is really work on our relationship with the recreational groups in the area. It wasn't long ago that in Shallow Lake we had 400 children playing soccer at one time, and they all contributed part of their registration towards a fund, and we would use it to buy equipment. It worked really well. The reason we lose these groups is if we don't partner with them really well. That group's now insolvable. Unfortunate that we lost them. They left for better facilities, and you can't blame them for that. The facilities at Sauble were set up better than what we could offer. What we're doing here is renovating and upgrading our facilities to make sure they're ready for that. The Shallow Lake Minor Hockey, I don't know if some parents here have some kids in Shallow Lake, they have a room in the upstairs that is full of brand new equipment, full to the brim, enough to suit, I'm gonna guess, 20 to 50 kids probably. It's donated by the Egg Farmers of Ontario, I think. It's an agricultural group, and I'm pretty sure it's the Egg Farmers. If I got that wrong, I'm sorry. But that's an example of a willingness for communities to pitch in when there are kids playing, kids meeting, kids in organized groups. So what we need to do is provide those facilities and build the relationships with those recreational groups. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
Yes, okay. Yeah. I was just talking to a coworker about this, that we could benefit from having something like a multi-sport league or have some sort of place to go to just do like recreational things. I ran a youth program for 10 years after, while I was in high school up until the end. And I absolutely loved everything about recreation and just being able to provide that to the community. And one of the things that we could do is find sponsors to help sponsor equipment. Like right now, I'm working at the school, we're partnering with Habitat for Humanity to build tiny homes. So it's amazing on who's willing to donate if the cause is good, if it's something for the community. And it's just always nice to see the generosity of some of the businesses that are willing to donate. So yeah, I would support 100% something like stocking a equipment room full of sporting equipment. That sounds awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Our next question, and we'll start with Kathy Moore-Coburn on this one. What is your understanding of the current situation with short-term rentals, specifically in Georgian Bluffs? What action, if any, do you think is necessary moving forward?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Is this working? You're hearing me okay? We have seen a tremendous increase in the number of short-term rentals over the past 2 or 3 years during the time of the pandemic. That has multiplied exponentially. And we're hearing more and more complaints from residents, our permanent residents of Georgian Bluffs, who are finding some of these rental units to be quite bothersome, and lots of violations of our bylaws. So we do need more information on what we can do and what's effective. And we don't need to look that far. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. This is something that is a problem throughout the province. And other municipalities have implemented all kinds of solutions that run the gamut from outright bans to licensing. And I think we just need to have staff do some homework and look into what's been effective and what works and move that forward, for sure.
Thank you, Kathy. And Colin, you would be next in line this time.
So we all know that South Bruce Peninsula has short-term accommodation, licensing and registration. And we can look to South Bruce Peninsula to see how it worked for them. Prior to doing that, though, without getting too ahead of ourselves, we have to really figure out what is best for Georgian Bluffs. Is it the same as South Bruce Peninsula? Do we have as many short-term accommodation kind of rentals happening? One thing I think we can all agree with is nobody wants to be listening to like loud music at 2 a.m. or fireworks going off or any of the other problems that are associated with those who are frequenting these short-term accommodations. So I think that we need to figure out first what staff can do in terms of making either a outright ban or a licensing with like rules of a playbook of what has to happen and what rules I guess, landlord would have to play by in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Tobin Day is next.
I've heard a lot about this over the last little while, and I'm not surprised because it's definitely something I've noticed in my neighborhood as well. And I would like to echo what's been said already, that there has been a delegation to council and the staff have been asked to look for solutions, and solutions are available that we can look at from surrounding municipalities. What I will add is that we should try and keep pace with these surrounding municipalities, because if Georgian Bluffs becomes the place that has no regulations while the areas around us do have regulations, then that becomes more attractive to the people who do want to run Airbnbs and other types of short-term accommodations. I will also say that we need to enforce those regulations, and I know South Bruce has employed a company to keep track of the rebel renters to see if anyone is skipping paying the fees to become a licensed short-term accommodation. So thank you for bringing this issue to the council, and I hope we can bring some solutions in the next term, or whoever is elected can.
Thank you, Tobin. Mike Smith is next.
Thank you. Yes, being in real estate, I see this all the time. Showing a buyer potential properties, that question does arise. No one wants to move in beside one. So it is going to affect property values for residents. It is a big deal. If we choose to go the licensing route, there must be severe consequences. Other municipalities have gone with a 3-strike rule, where if you're fined 3 times, your license is revoked. The other thing we have to look at, being that we're on septic systems, a 3-bedroom home, you have 15 people staying in it, you're overloading that septic system. So you also need to look at number of people in those homes. But yes, it is something that needs to be dealt with and needs to be dealt with right away. And if we do go a licensing and regulation and taxation route and that doesn't solve it, then you may have to go further with a ban.
Thanks, Mike. Brian Thompson.
There's a problem with going near the end. Everybody else has a chance to say what you're thinking before you get to it. But I think I am an evidence-based decision maker, and I need all the data and all the perspectives. So over the past months, I've seen pictures, I've talked to lots of property owners who are living next to short-term rentals, and I can't imagine what they're going through. So a summer, looking at 10, 12, 15 cars in your parking lot, parties going on at night, it is nowhere to live. It is nowhere to be proud of. So that needs to change. What we're missing is all of that good data and evidence about what the next steps are. So yes, is it bylaw and enforcement? Absolutely. I think bylaws need to be clear and they need to be enforced. If they're not clear or they're not enforced, they're useless. So that's something we need to be really tight on. The other thing is looking at what have other places done to resolve this. And I would agree, we put together all of the best information about making a decision, and then we have a staged way to treat poor performers or poor behaviors. So that's my best suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And Rick Winters is next.
Thank you. I believe there's only 2 choices to this situation. One is either an outright ban or a licensing system that needs to be implemented sooner than later. Through my course of employment, I do a lot of sewage system designs. I deal with North Bruce Peninsula, I deal with South Bruce Peninsula. I've seen this over and over again. If you don't license, you don't have environmental controls, right? Mike is the only one up here that has mentioned that as far as sewage systems and whatnot. It's out of control, and the only way to deal with it is to license it or ban it. The council has a decision to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick. We will now move to the front of the line, and Dwight Burley.
You missed Chris.
Oh, no, Chris is after the mayoral candidates.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going down the list after that, going back to the top. Sorry, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I put in my brochure and I've talked about this right at the beginning of my opening remarks. This is a real serious problem in Georgian Bluffs when you go and talk to the people that have to live beside these short-term rentals and so on. The people that own them probably live in the GTA and don't give a damn what happens up here. That's not right. It ruins the quality of the people's lives that come here to want to live in beautiful Georgian Bluffs. We as a council do not have to invent the wheel. You got Blue Mountain, South Bruce Peninsula, there's many municipalities around here have tried to deal with the problem and have come up with some real good solutions. We as a council need to instruct our staff to come back with the necessary information reports to council, put it all together so the council as a whole can look at it and see what fits Georgian Bluffs. And when we put it together, and I'm a real serious person when it comes to, don't think about fines of $500. We need to make it so people listen to what we're saying. Make it $5,000 fine. Make it so they stand attention and don't want to do it. Now, as for banning it completely, we're not there yet. Let's get staff to come back with the proper reports so we can understand what it's all about, to make sure we do it once and do it right, and we can do it very soon and at the beginning of our new council.
Thank you, Dwight. Sue Carlton is next.
Thank you. I agree with Ryan. When you come near the end, everybody else has already answered the question. So the sewage system part is probably the most important part. My late husband actually worked for Airbnb, and they were very strict on their controls. But septage was an issue because those tanks kept getting overfilled. They were on a shore water system, so that was an issue. There are so many things environmentally that are impacted by these Airbnbs with, in this case, it was an 8-bedroom cottage. They had upwards of 50 people to 100 people there if there was a wedding on that weekend. They weren't bringing in porta potties. And that's one of the bigger issues. So how do you put the controls on, and what controls are needed? I think we're looking at staff to come back with those answers. Northern Bruce Peninsula has looked into it. South Bruce Peninsula, Town of Blue Mountains, there's certainly other areas that we can go and get lots of data and then compare it to what our own situation is and what do we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Last, or second last, we'll have Scott Kettle.
I have received probably, I'm going to say, 20, 25 phone calls and probably 20, 25 emails over this issue of these that people want to call absent landlords. And trust me, none of them were near as pleasant as to how you asked that question. And these are people that are living beside these things. Okay? Now, a business is a business within municipality. And you can't condemn all businesses. But why are we waiting till now to be acting on this? There's been information on these things for years. We know there's been problems for years. The data's out there. And I do believe that Mike Smith hit it on the head. 3 strikes, you're out. Simple license, simple bylaw put in place. You can make changes, you can make adjustments after. But why have we waited so long to do this? And we're going to be how much longer trying to get this done? I'll tell you one thing right now, that if I am elected, I will be in first quarter of next year. This is going to be dealt with. We will sit at meetings until this is done. This has to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now Chris Azevedo.
Yeah, I think everyone's touched on this pretty well. But what I want to say is everyone's entitled to reasonable enjoyment of their property. And I feel terrible for anyone in the situation that they're facing. That being said, we do need the data. Council has already directed staff to gather the data. We need to see what the extent of that is, how many Airbnbs there are. We can't necessarily paint everybody with the same brush because there are a lot of, I've heard from both sides of the coin, and there are a lot of respectful owners who manage their properties well and they don't have issues with their neighbors. Georgian Bluffs is a municipality that relies heavily on tourism. We have a lot of small businesses that depend on that tourism. There's clearly a need for short-term rentals in this community. So obviously we need to ramp up enforcement and bylaws to deal with the issue. And biggest thing is enforcing them. And I know there is a solution that would benefit the people who have these issues, as well as respect the homeowners of the establishments running these.
Thank you very much, Chris. Next question is directed to Mr. Winters, Rick Winters. There is much conversation about why your employment ended in February 2020. Will you share with those at this meeting why your employment ended and how you will reestablish respectful working relationships with council and staff at Georgian Bluffs?
Well, thank you. That's the elephant in the room, and all I'm going to say is my employment was terminated by the municipality in February of 2020. I'm going to chalk it up to a disagreement, a difference of opinion between councillors and staff. I'm also going to say that one of the things that I bring to the table is the willingness to communicate, an open-minded in a professional manner. I was never given that opportunity when my employment was done, so I want to bring that back to the council table where the ability to talk and direct people face to face is there. Thank you.
Thank you. And because that was directed specifically to Rick, I don't think you
the other
need
answers.
the redirections. Next question is question number 7. Should the township be seeking public consultation with residents, landowners, and road users before reducing road maintenance or abandoning and closing township roads? And this starts with Colin Correa.
Can you read the question again, please?
I can. I can do it.
We're off to a good start.
School, you know. Should the township be seeking public consultation with residents, landowners, and road users before reducing road maintenance or abandoning and closing township roads?
Absolutely. If I was a stakeholder and if I was a taxpayer, ratepayer, and something was being reduced or something was being changed for something I was paying for, I would hope that I would be consulted before it changes or gets modified in any way. If I offer a service and I charge someone for that service and the expectation is I do A, B, and C, but then I say, I'm only going to give A and B and not C. I would hope that I would have the grace to communicate to those people, my clients, ratepayers, that they are not going to receive a service. So, yes, I would.
Thank you. Tobin Day is next.
I'm feeling like there might be a story behind this question that I don't know. But yes, I feel like I would like to learn this story so I can speak more clearly about it and make sure we don't make constituents feel like they aren't being consulted before changes are happening to their neighborhoods. I remember watching a fantastic TED Talk about communication and politics. And the speaker, I can get his name, I can't remember it right now, but he compared a Nike shoe commercial to a big sign, he used the city of Toronto, about a new building that was going to go in. And he looked at how easy it was to understand the Nike commercial, and if you wanted to buy a pair of shoes, it was really obvious how to do it, compared to the big poster that explained the new development, which had a lot of technical language and jargon in it that you had to work through to understand the big issue. And the speaker proposed you could have a picture of the building, and it could say, we want to build this here with a map, and how much better that would be for communicating to the public. So I think with many municipalities, there is room for improving communication, and I would love to learn more, and I bet I will very soon.
Mike Smith. Thank you, Tobin.
I'm like Tobin, I'm in the dark on this, so obviously there is a story, and yes, I would like to hear it as well. Anytime you're reducing services or road maintenance, and taxpayers live on that road, then yes, public consultation needs to be had. My first question would come to my mind is, are my taxes reduced because I'm receiving less services? So I don't know why or what's going on, but yes, not only do you need a staff report on what's going on and why it's closed, but yes, you need public input as well.
Ryan.
That's good. I can give you one of the stories. There's 100 stories, but I can give you one of them. And I'll try and be quick. I've always been one that uses 100 words when 10 would probably do. But I have a personal story about road reduction and a road closure. So we own 200-acre farm on just on the Range Road, just off Cole Side Road. And that used to be a great road. Lots of traffic back and forth. You had no trouble. You could plant corn. You could get tractors in and out. You could get trucks in and out. And then it stopped being maintained, and it went to be a real bad road. And it got to be such that we couldn't get truckers to come and get our cattle out of there in the fall or take them there in the spring. The challenge is, in former Capel and around here, there's so many roads that it's sometimes not practical to fix, repair, maintain. And we've gotten a situation where we have a lot of roads like ours that stop being maintained because it wouldn't be practical It wouldn't be practical use of the money for us to go down there and widen that road and put gravel on it twice a year and do all the things that it needs to be a great road the way it used to be, just so Ryan Thompson can get his cattle out of there. But the risk is then you have a problem where you see roads just start disappearing. So at the end of this long story, communication is the key. I think what we need to do is make sure we're communicating and make sure that the lines are open for people to come back to us and they feel like they can share concerns and be heard. So not a perfect example. We have lots of different roads that are not practical to maintain at this time, but we need to be communicative and make sure that we're sharing what's happening in the municipality.
Thank you, Ryan. Rick Winters.
Again, being one of the last ones to speak, I think that's been addressed here, but yeah, by all means, everything that's down service level, increase or decrease to those affected residents needs to be communicated. I want to take it one step farther. I believe there was a standard set. You know, there's a lot of unopened roads, unmaintained roads in the municipality that probably should be brought back into the township road network as well. You look at Francis Drive, for instance, where the local residents petitioned the municipality to take that road over and assume ownership of it. There's several up at Bass Lake, some at Mountain Lake, but there's a lot of that comes in, and I think communication is key, and you need to listen to the residents.
Dwight Burley, thank you, Rick. Dwight would be next.
Thank you very much. There's got to be a lot more to this story in question that's being out here. The municipality can't stop up and close a road unless it's advertised. That's one thing. Maintenance on a road, I'm quite confident that the municipality wouldn't just stop doing maintenance on a road because they didn't want to. There's a lot more to this story when I'm getting, so it's very hard to answer it in a sensible way.
Thank you, and we'll have Sue Carlton next, please.
I agree with Dwight. I think there's a lot more to the story that we need to know before we can fully answer. But I think in any situation, we have to look at what are the circumstances, how many people are using that road, and why are they using that road? Because there may be only two, but if that's their entire livelihood, then closing the road without proper consultation would be rather cruel, I think. So I think we'd need to know the whole story, but at any point in time, we need to communicate and have consultation before we ever consider closing a road. Talk to the residents first, find out what the impacts of that are going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Scott Cadlow.
Okay, we're back to this question that the original question was basically, no, I'm good with the question. I'm fine with it. Was whether, there's proper consultation and direction and talking with the people out there regarding these issues. And again, I've got tons of phone calls and I got tons of emails about these, and the stories are not just one, they're many, where something as simple as a road becomes now completely unmaintained, or a road simply that used to be a nice asphalt surface that's now chip and tar and chip, or not near as wide, those kind of things. Seems we in the last few years, we keep getting less and less for our tax dollar, and people are starting to stand up, and complaints are there. But back to the original question, yes, 100% we need to be talking to the people before we make these kind of changes. We have to justify to the people why we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Chris Azevedo is next.
Yeah, I think everyone's addressed the road at point of the question, but it's important to me, any change in any service requires communication, effective communication. That's one of the pillars that I'm running on. And it can't simply just be posting something on a website or expecting residents to read it in minutes from council meetings. So if there's an impact to specific individuals, it's very easy to send them a letter to inform them, right? And effective communication is key so we can understand how the changes will impact those specific residents affected. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Kathy Coburn's last on this question.
Last and not a whole lot more to offer. I agree with Councillor Thompson. I think sometimes difficult decisions have to be made, but they should never be made without proper public consultation and getting the input from the ratepayers. I would like to see us go back to having some good old town hall meetings every once in a while in our various communities. What I have found in the last 4 years is often we hear complaints and concerns coming in, and they seem like a one-off, But when you start to look at them all as a collection, they are concerns that permeate through entire areas and villages and communities. And I think I would like to see council go out and have these town hall meetings and hear what everybody in the community has to say.
Thank you, Kathy. Our next question is for all candidates, and we will be starting with Colin. Again? Didn't we? Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, Tobin, I'm losing track of my dots here. I better put in a dot right now. Okay. Question for all candidates. What do you think would be the top 3 most effective ways for a municipality to reduce its corporate greenhouse gas emissions?
Okay, the 3 most effective ways. Does it indicate if that's, well, I'm just going to dive right in. Buildings are a really big one. Looking at any municipally owned building and thinking about how they are heated and cooled, and any new builds. The Kemble Arena is a great example of a place where there is money right now that could be put towards a building that is moving towards or is a net zero building. The climate, Grey County has a climate manager or a climate, I'm afraid I can't remember her official title right now, but she recommends transportation is a really key place to address right now. When I first bought my hybrid car, I could count on one hand the number of people who also had one, and I knew them all. But now I see them all over town, and that transition is happening from gas to hybrid to full electric. But we don't have places for people to plug their cars in, and there are issues to figure out around that in terms of can you unplug somebody's car when they're not there? So there are little quirks to work out around transportation as well. And transportation for public vehicles also includes another related topic is looking at everything we do as a municipality that involves something that moves. Can Miller Waste move towards something that is more ecologically friendly? And there are lots of steps that have already happened in there to make moves to doing those types of things. A final thing, I might have 3.5 by the end of this, I realize, is preserving the green spaces that we have. We need our carbon sinks to get rid of the carbon dioxide, or to hold the carbon dioxide from the air. So our forests are an incredibly important resource to everyone around us. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Tobin. Mike Smith is up next.
So, I think probably the best way to do it is green space. The biggest thing we have to do is make sure we have green space as a municipality. The other we can do is looking at purchasing vehicles when it allows. There's quite a few trucks, stuff like that needed in a municipality, but you can look at, if you just have to get from point A and B, you can look at hybrids, you can look at electrics. The other thing we can help with the environment is building codes. You can bring in more green requirements into our building codes, stuff like that.
Thanks. I'm probably not going to answer the question properly, but I guess I've got the mic, so I can do that. But I think the key piece that I wanted to highlight was in my speech about applying a climate lens to all the decisions we make. So I think that should be our overarching behavior, that we use that climate lens all the time. I think the areas where we're going to make gains, and my colleague Tobin has just talked about this, is that new builds and retrofitting, make sure that we're being energy efficient or looking for alternate use of power. I think that really being careful to preserve our green space and make sure that our environmental assessments are clear and that we pay attention to them. And the last thing I think of is, and I haven't done a lot of research on this, but looking at the opportunity for us to offer grants or offer incentives to businesses that are using environmental methods or environmental innovation. So those are the 3 things in the overarching decision-making matrix that I suggest.
Thank you, Ryan. And Rick Winters is next.
Thank you. So the 3 most important things I believe that you can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is your building heating and cooling systems. When I wrote the grant application for the Kemble Arena, that's what I incorporated, was an electric heat pump. Well, it said solar panels is a vision on the roof to help offset that, to be a net zero sort of thing. So heating within our public municipal buildings. Our vehicles, I mean, buying 8-cylinder gas Dodge pickup trucks to do administration vehicles, they could have been hybrid. They should be, hybrid, electric. They could even be natural gas vehicles. And the third one that nobody's really touched on here is actually your solid waste. 30% of what you put in a garbage bag goes into the landfill, right? Greenhouse gas emissions coming out of your landfill. So there's ways to look at that and create renewable natural gas out of that facility, at-home composting, whatever. But the more we bury in the ground, the worse our greenhouse gas emissions become.
Thank you, Rick. Dwight Burley, you'd be next up.
Thank you. One thing George and Bluffs have done, we have a program in place right now where we're planting trees. This is a great thing in the municipality. Working with the bar dresser to get rid of separating organics is another issue that we need to deal with, and it's just a great way of doing it. I agree with what Mr. Winter says about buildings and heat and electric. Yes, there's many things we've started, but there's many ways we can improve. It's stuff that we can do immediately instead of later.
Thank you, Dwight. Sue Carlton, please.
I would say transportation is one of the things, if it's reasonable. Thinking of an electric motor in a snowplow that's going to try and go up the Kemble Mountain is probably not realistic. So we have to stay realistic. Buildings are definitely an area. I think any new builds, we can have our chief building official encourage that the new build be more climate friendly, that they implement measures to ensure that they save on fuel costs and that type of thing. And finally, I think our green space, and I think in Georgian Bluffs, we are well blessed with lots of trees, but we can always plant more. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And Scott Cato is next. Yes.
There's a number of things here that are probably not a lot of people up here have touched on or you really thought about. Well, something as simple as the things that we're doing every day. Everybody's talking about green space. They're talking about planting trees. They're talking about hydro vehicles, combination vehicles, these kind of savings. Well, what about savings within our own system and our own development we already have in place? Why? It's been brought up here tonight a few times. They've talked about agriculture and the loss of agricultural land. Well, agricultural land technically is green space. 5 months ago, it was 316 acres were being removed today. Now it's 319, we're up to there. There's a bunch of policies set up by the province to protect the smaller farms. Keep them in place, keep them viable, keep them financially safe. We are not taking advantage of those. 2, development. Why don't we put some incentives involved for our developers? Why are we building nothing but big, massive homes? Why are we spreading houses all over our township land? Develop, we got to change the way we do it. Urban sprawl, change it. Change it to let's build up instead of completely build out. A lot of those kind of smaller buildings, seniors' homes, one-story type buildings, that's a lot different from what we're currently building right now. And that saves a lot of energy and a lot of time. Let's put the incentives in place for people to make the right decisions instead of trying to find ones to replace something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Chris Azevedo.
Yeah, I think everyone's touched on quite a bit of it. Obviously, as our fleet vehicles die off, we need to look at replacing them with more environmentally friendly vehicles. Same with our buildings as we renovate and build new. Same idea. One big thing though is waste diversion. The last time we looked at our long-term waste plan was 2010, I believe it was. I think we've come a long way in what we can do. I think it's important to look at that long-term waste plan again and see if there's any areas that we can improve upon to help our environment for our future.
Thank you, Chris. We are now moving to Kathy Coburn. Thank you.
Okay. So not a whole lot left for me to add. I agree that the question I believe specifically focused on the corporate side, so not the community side. And so there's lots we can do in terms of the community side, but corporate-wise, yes, greener buildings and retrofits for our municipal buildings, and greening our fleets. with electric vehicles and hybrids. And I agree, the third one being more green space. We have fallen into the habit of allowing for cash in lieu of green space when we approve developments, and I would like to see us ask that developers include the green space into their developments rather than taking the cash to sit off in the side and really do nothing to improve our amount of green space. We did have a study done recently that showed that we're almost at the acceptable level of green space that we ought to have on the corporate side of things as a municipality. But going forward, we need to make sure we're keeping that percentage up to where it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Colin?
Thank you. I'm going to do this one more time. Can you just read me the question once more? Thanks.
Absolutely. But I've got to put my glasses.
The last one. Last time I was the first one, but
What do you think would be the top 3 most effective ways for a municipality to reduce its corporate greenhouse gas emissions?
okay, yeah. So, like Kathy touched on, it was corporate. I had other things I wanted to say about retrofits for homes, which would save ratepayers money, but the same retrofits could occur corporate-wise as well. I know that there's probably really good staff that would be grant writing and be able to find grants which are either federal or provincial, and they could be such that where they're retrofitting heating systems and cooling systems, as you touched on before, because ultimately there's technology now that exists that for construction that, you know, we have spray foam installations that are bad insulation that just look way better, and we could be saving a lot of money by just using modern materials and retrofitting new technology into our facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Our next question is for all candidates, and I believe we're starting with Mike Smith now. Is that correct? I don't want to mess this up. For all candidates, what is your plan to get the tax rate back down or back below 1%?
So when you're talking about taxes, if you want to cut taxes without cutting services, you have to look for the money that's being wasted. Where we need to look first, because we're top heavy, is internally. So we'll do a study, we'll look at where we can save money and go from there. Without cutting services, that's the best I can tell you.
Thank you, Mike. Brian Thompson, please.
That's a really tough question to look at. How do you cut the tax rate? I think what we need to look at is what we offer as a package of services and what our tax rate is for residents in a municipality. I think that what we need to do is look for efficiency and find ways that we can reduce our expenses. I think what our challenge is going to be is, at the same time, if we're going to say we want to make sure we run that East Linton water treatment out to Potawatomi so that they can have better water, and we want to buy all new hybrid vehicles, we're heading in the wrong direction. So I think it's not a scenario that we can look and say, let's start cut. I think what we need to do is find out what are our expenditures, what's good use of our expenditures. So if we're spending money, are we spending money that is spending money to improve our carbon footprint that we're talking about? An area that we can save, so if we're looking at an area that might help bring our tax rate down, it's our biodigester. That's a great example. We're spending money, the airport, we spend money on those because they are endeavors that we launched into with the best of intentions, but without the best of business plans. So I think that's a really good area to look at. So the first place I would look at is our biodigester.
Thank you, Ryan. Rick Winters, please.
Thank you, and by all means, to keep a 1% tax increase, you have to find efficiencies. And when you look for efficiencies, you've got to look inside the box. And doing stuff every year the same and same again doesn't justify finding efficiencies. I've seen a number of staff positions increase over the last 4 years. I've seen service levels decrease. I think there are positions there that could be looked at. Councillor Thompson mentioned the biodigester. You have to look at what your core service represents, what you want to do, what you want to spend money on. I don't think it's a realistic target just every year get up and say we want a 1% tax increase or less, but you really have to find efficiencies. And that's one of the things I've elected, that's what I want to do. We need to look inside the box and find efficiencies.
Thank you, Rick. Dwight Burley, please.
Thank you. We all don't like tax increases. One thing that we have to realize, we're very fortunate in Georgian Bluffs. We're one of the lowest tax base in the whole region. And that's good, really good that way. I don't think anybody wants services reduced. We do need to look for efficiencies. I agree 100%. What that would be, I do not know yet. But we will, in this next term of council, look at all kinds of ways of trying to reduce our tax base. I do not believe we can run a municipality on a 0% increase. That's stupid. We can't do that. We do need an increase to be able to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwight. And Sue Carleton is next.
I would agree efficiencies is part of it. I think being realistic though, if we stay at a 1% tax increase and inflation is rising by 5%, are we falling behind for the next year? And in that year, then do we have to pick up at 4%? So I think we have to be realistic and stay with what's affordable for everybody and try to keep it at that rate, not to try to achieve something that can't be continued every year. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Scott Cattle.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to agree with both Ms. Charlton and Mr. Burley here. Everybody keeps talking here about efficiency. We got to find efficiencies. Well, why aren't we doing that? It's just that simple. There's opportunities out there, and there has been for years and years. We have opportunities. There's a real communication problem with regards to sharing systems, sharing different things with other municipalities to save money and be smarter about how we spend our tax dollars. And those things are not clearly being put into play. That's one thing I will be striving for. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris Azevedo, please.
Yeah, I think it's, can you read the question again? Because I think we kind of went off topic a bit.
But I gotta get my glasses
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. To all candidates, what is your plan to get the rate back below 1%?
Okay, so, I mean, everyone sort of touched on it, looking for efficiencies within our budget. As a business owner, as a family, I have a large family, 4 kids. We prioritize our spending and we work within our budget. Obviously, nobody wants to see services lost, but there might be a better way to implement those services and save some money in those efficiencies. The biodigester is a big burden on the ratepayers, but it could turn into something profitable and actually might be a benefit to the ratepayers and the community. We have to look at that and see what the options are there, or look at cutting our losses and minimizing the impact to everyone. So biggest thing is, yeah, looking for those efficiencies, finding a better way to run the township and see where we can save some money.
Kathy Coburn, thank you.
It's my turn. We live in interesting times because over the past 4 years, I think we are hearing more and more from ratepayers that they want more and more. They want more programs, they want more services, they want more recreational opportunities. And yet at the same time, we want our tax rates to be 0%. Along those lines, I think what the new council needs to do is sit down and look at their strategic directions and decide what are the priorities for each year and what will fall within a budget that will allow a lower tax rate. I don't think that in the past we have agreed to 0% increases. And as our deputy mayor has said, that really ultimately means we're going backwards because everything else is costing more. So I think we need to be realistic, and yes, we can look for efficiencies, but we also need to do a better job at our strategic planning and deciding what our priorities are for each year.
Thank you, Kathy. Colin.
Thank you. I think that this question comes from a place like the other question where it was, oh, something was done and reduced from my road, and I didn't know, like we weren't getting the whole story. This reduction of 1%, or trying to get your taxes under 1%, comes from somewhere. And I'm gonna humor me for a little on this. This is the teacher me coming out. Right now, it's very difficult. Like, the price of everything's going up. Who here in the last 2 years is kind of a little bit fed up with having to pay extra for things that they normally would pay less for? Put your hands up. Raise your hand. Yeah, right? And I don't know, like, that's how I feel about a few things, like fuel, food. It's like my coworker was telling me just today that he bought a bag of apples and it was $25. It was $25 for just 9 or 10 apples. Granted, they were golden crisp or golden something. Anyway, they were $4 a pound apples. But the idea is we need to save money somehow. And this question comes from that place. And what my colleagues have all said already is, well, if we do reduce the taxes to 1% or less, there's no way we can offer the great services that we've been talking about up until this point, like the community center and recreation and all these great things. So this is a real tough question for me to answer. And I think it's because we're living in tough times right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. And now Tobin.
Well, this is a hard question with no one easy answer. And I think the fellow candidates here have done a good job of addressing both the desire, and really logical desire, to keep our tax rates low, and also the challenge of providing services when taxes aren't going up. I don't have an instant answer to this one, and I'm relieved to hear that some other folks might feel that way as well, and some studies might need to be done. But I do, as we address issues like this, I always want to keep in mind people who have lower incomes. I have a connection to the Beaver Valley, and there are some settler families there where the ancestors, the younger generations, they were having trouble hanging on to their family homes because the tax rates had gone up, but their incomes hadn't gone up in that region where second homes were becoming more common. As Georgian Bluffs gets more attractive to the Toronto crowd, a realtor from the city told my friend who was looking at buying a property up here that Georgian Bluffs has become exclusive. I think we need to keep track of the folks in our community who need the support the most and make sure that they can afford their taxes.
All my life I've wanted to live in an exclusive community.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Ryan will be starting this off. What can council do to support and expand tourism in Georgian Bluffs?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think we've had this in a lot of years, or the years I've been here. I think that we have the great fortune of living in the most beautiful area. So when we look at all of the natural beauty that surrounds us and the tourism that exists here, I think what we need to do is the same as a corporation, as a municipality, is to partner better. So we need to partner with trailer parks, businesses, attractions. We need to encourage people to open up shop in our community, and we need to give them something back. We need to help them market themselves. We have to help them find carve a place out that makes them an attractive destination. We can certainly do that with advertising. We can do it by partnering with social media. We can do it on our website. We have to find a way to help businesses and attractions put their best foot forward. I think the tourists are here. They're coming. It's a stream. We just need to help people market themselves and put themselves out there and be a place on the map. I look at around Big Bay. Big Bay ice cream just popped into my thing today, and I was thinking, I happened to be there pounding a sign in, and there was a lineup right out the door, right across the street, and then halfway back to Gray Road 1. So those places exist, they're on the map, they're must-stop places for people that are coming to visit. We just have to help market them. The airport restaurants, another good example. You know, I often hear people say, where do I grab something to eat? It's just not, you know, we have to help market some of those places and make them stopping points. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. And Rick Winters is next.
Yeah, there's really only one answer to that question, and it is you have to market, you have to collaborate, and you have to work with those tourism operators to get the word out and to support it. I don't know how many in the room every year you go south and you go to your local hotel, you walk down to the counter and you say, what do we do here? And there's a rack full of brochures of these are the local attractions, these are the tour guides, these are... When you come to Grey Bruce, we all talk about tourists, and they're kind of free-willed here because they go everywhere, because they're not really controlled and we don't do a good job of marketing and bringing all those facilities together. Again, the township has websites, they have social media platforms, they have digital signs, but it's a matter of bringing those groups together with the willingness of the community and the township council to work together.
Thank you, Rick. Dwight Burley.
Thank you. You know, we live in God's country. There's no question about it, Georgian Bluffs. We all talk about tourism, want to get all kinds of tourists coming to this area and so on. One thing we forgot, once they get here, what are we going to do with it? That's a thing that we forgot to do. We need to be ready for the tourists that are coming to this area. We're not. We don't do enough advertising to promote our municipality. One thing, for instance, I'd like to see is rejoin the Chamber of Commerce and District. That's an important thing in this area for Georgian Bluffs. And we're not members, but we should be. And I really think that we could promote our area a lot better than we do. We've got many, many wonderful attractions in Georgian Bluffs. People find them. We could make them find them a lot easier, make it more better for them.
Thank you, Dwight. Sue Carlton, please.
As I said earlier, one of the reasons as a county councillor, I chose the Tourism Advisory Committee was to look at that. What are some of our options? One of the things would truly be have a pamphlet or multiple pamphlets that advertise to the rest of the world what they can expect when they arrive in Georgian Bluffs. The last pamphlet that we have actually referenced Pumpkin Chuckin'. It's a little out of date. So we need to do things like that and showcase maybe the waterfalls and all of the walking trails and such. We have the waterfront trail that goes through Georgian Bluffs. There are also, one of my thoughts is the signage for all of our little communities like Shoaldice and Crookshank and Kemble have a QR code on there that ties back to the township website, gives a history of the place that people are coming through. Let people know where they're at and how this place arrived, what brought the people here and what kept them here. Give that history to them. The same could be done for cemeteries. Let people know what there is here for them in easy ways that they can find as they drive through the municipality without having to really search for it. There's lots of different things that we could do. Those are just the very beginning.
Thank you, Sue. And next we have Scott Kettle, please.
There's not a lot left here that I can comment on this, but one of the things that in the time that we do live in is we live in the age of technology where everyone can talk to anybody through how many sources. There's thousands of options out there through Facebook and all these type of things that we need to use as a group and at the community level. And as Sue has talked about there, working with the county to get Georgian Bluffs, get us on the map, and get it out there. We have to take every advantage possible to move forward on that and use everything that's put in front of us and use it to our advantage. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And next is Chris.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, tourism is a big part of this community. There's a lot of small businesses that rely on that. As a municipality, we need to help them grow, help them market themselves. The tourists are coming. There's a great opportunity. We talked about lowering taxes in the last question. Tourism can help with that. It's dollars being spent in our community, more small businesses popping up, which means more taxes to help support everybody.
Thank you, Chris. Kathy Coburn, please.
Yeah, so as it's been mentioned, tourism and our local businesses are inextricably linked. We have done almost nothing for our business community over the past few years, and yet they have been the hardest hit from the impacts of the pandemic. So we need to step up. I would like to ask our business owners what we can do to help them. It doesn't need to be a grand study, it just simply needs to be a survey where they can let us know how we can best help them. We do have the tourists coming. We just need to help them focus on the businesses, the restaurants, the stores and shops that we have in Georgian Bluffs, so that they're not just driving through our communities, that they're stopping there and spending their money. When we have a healthy commercial and business community, we all benefit, so we do want to support that.
Thank you, Kathy. Colin Correa, please.
I think it's a very good idea to have money allotted to, or spend money on the promotion of our beautiful area. I want to see businesses have more customers as a result of tourism. They're already, you know, maybe going up Highway 6 to Tobermory, and you want to kind of draw them into maybe some of the really cool things that we have to offer. I know that I've met a lot of tourists. This summer I worked at a bakery at Georgian Bay Country Market, and I would talk to tourists that were on their way up to Tobermory and tell them about places to go in Georgian Bluffs, and they were unaware of it. So it would be beneficial to maybe do some sort of marketing. Maybe someone on staff in charge of marketing could make some videos like they do have for South Bruce Peninsula that highlight some of the great places to visit in Georgian Bluffs. This is not a joke, but you might laugh. One of the things is, like, there's a Netflix series, it's like whatever hotel makeover or something, and then Sauble Beach. Like, who's seen that, right? Or what was the other Amazing Grace Canada just did Tobermory, and then, like, you know, Lloyd's Smoke Shop. Like, that would be so cool. I was showing that to my students today before Mass. We were watching the Amazing Race Canada, and some of them were like, whoa, that's Zayres. Like, they're lost at Zayres. I'm like, yeah, they are. Because, you know, like, it's just cool to see stuff on TV that, you know, like, it's where we live. And I would like to see, like, maybe more of that. There are 4 horror movies filmed in Rockford. So I like, you know, stuff like that, you know? I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, the reference of that. Thank you.
Tobin Day, please. Thank you, Colin.
Hello. I think I'd like to come at this question from a slightly different angle and talk about how we can wisely promote tourism. I think we can take the North Bruce as a cautionary tale. I took my cousins who'd never been here before to Flower Pot Island this summer and watched a couple stuff a diaper into the crevasse next to the flower pots. So the parking, the garbage, the overcrowding, those things, if we can teach the tourists how to be tourists who give to our neighborhood without leaving behind problems for us to clean up, then I think we can proactively bring tourism into our area in a way that we feel like we might have a little bit of more control over, instead of relying on social media to drive that for us. I think sometimes those photos of Skinner's Bluff and Big Bay, they're absolutely fantastic in some ways, and we also have to accompany that with a message about how to keep that area beautiful. I also want to say that the businesses are incredibly important, and the pandemic has been hard on them for our existing businesses. So having those brochures, I'm watching for that red flag because I have so many more ideas. I think business owners have ideas about what they need. I was a member of the Oxenden Indigenous Art Committee. I think some of you have probably seen A.G. Jack at the corner in Oxenden. And just last week, there was a tour bus parked on the corner for people to check out Charmaine Jenner's new artwork on display.
Thank you, Tobin. Mike Smith, please.
So the tourists have found us. They are here. What we need to be is business friendly. attract more businesses, give them something to do when they're here. Attractions, restaurants, hotels, motels. Not only do those businesses increase our corporate tax intake, they can help us offset our increases to residential taxes. They can also help us more places to stay. They can help us with our short-term rental problem. You have to be business friendly. You have to give them something to do, make them stay, make them come back.
Thank you. Now, we're coming near the end of all the questions because we're past 9, and I've got one really quick one-word answer question, which should be easy for everybody to answer. No. Just let me find this again here. Oh, here it is. Are you a permanent resident, full-time resident of Georgian Bluffs? This is a nice quickie for you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Well, we gotta go right.
We gotta go in order. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Guys, follow him.
That was a yes, wasn't it?
That was a yes.
Thank you very much. Dwight, yes.
Me? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then, of course, Sue.
He said yes.
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 And then the next one, oh gosh, I don't. Yeah, Azevedo. Yes. Thank you. Coburn?
Yes.
And Colin?
Yes.
Tay?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Ryan Thompson?
Yes.
Good. Now we'll move to one for, you see, I just want you to know we can get through one question really quickly, right? Okay, we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to have one just for the mayoral candidates, and then we'll have one final question. I think, just given the way the time's going. For the mayoral candidates, let me see, I guess we start with Scott on this one, because I think we started with you on the last one. The current council appears divided. What leadership qualities will you bring as mayor to support the teamwork and cohesion on council?
Okay, that question I kind of touched a bit on when I started with my introduction and my original speech to the people here tonight. And I truly believe in, and I feel very strongly about this. This is something that has been lacking within the municipality for some time now. We do truly need true leadership. I don't believe that it's the mayor's duty to dictate any type of policies and procedures, who, what, when, where, and how. It is the mayor's duty, 100%, to make the system work. Then to take all concerns from the municipality and at its level to the county. We seem to have had for quite a while now issues within council, issues within communication, these type of problems. I truly believe that has now gone down the line where it now affects staff, because we have had quite a bit of staffing issues and problems within the municipality. That's something I feel very, very strongly about. It doesn't matter whether you have 5 people in a room or whether you have 500. You must respectfully and at all times all move forward for the greater good of them all. And sometimes you have to give, sometimes you have to take. And that's been a problem with the municipality. It's been a problem with the municipality and in dealing with other municipalities to share services. This type of culture needs to change, and that would be actually number 1 in my priority. This culture we have now needs to change. Thank you,
Scott. Dwight.
Thank you. I'm a firm believer, as I said before, that council has to work as a team. We sit around that council chamber, we all have the same power. No one has any more power than anyone else. We need to be able to communicate, need to have great discussion on every issue, put it to a vote, and move forward. But we have to move forward as a team, not divided. And that's extremely important we do that. Yes, we've had a lot of turmoil in the last 4 years in council. Then throw COVID in there too, that didn't help. We as a council need to work as a team and build up a great relationship with our staff. The staff are key in our municipality, and we all need to be able to communicate. That's a big thing we need to do. As I said before, common sense. Let's sit down in a room and have a conversation.
Thank you, Dwight. Sue, you'll be the final one on this question.
As I said earlier, it's my belief that the mayor, as head of council, has a duty to lead and to ensure that all of council is heard, that everyone's opinion is put forth respectfully, that it's heard, and that dissension isn't allowed. That everyone needs to realize we're all elected by the people of this municipality to to work together. And that can be done. And it doesn't mean that we can't all have different opinions. We need to have those different opinions. We need to respect each other's different opinions and be sure that we listen to them. And sometimes listening truly to what the other person is saying means that you move forward with a new idea. That sometimes the silliest things spur on a silly idea that grows into the solution to the problem. But I think it's the mayor's duty and responsibility to provide that leadership, to ensure that everyone at that council table is heard, and to also ensure that all of council respect our staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're moving into the final question, and I'm going to ask the timekeepers to keep everybody's answers to 1.5 minutes instead of 2. Okay, 90 seconds instead of 120. And then we can do one more question. And we'll be starting with Chris Azevedo, I think, on this one. And because I think thank you. That did make sense. What specifically are your 2 top climate action proposals?
You sure we got to start with me? That's really a tough question. That probably needs a lot more thought, but specifically the top 2 climate proposals, I mean, I don't even know, that's hard to say. Probably looking at the future and how we develop our community to see what we can do with new construction and being more green and energy efficient, looking to potentially put forward something along those lines. And I think I touched on this before, our long-term waste strategy, I think does need to be revised or looked at again. It was last looked at in 2010. And there are new ideas, new ways of waste diversion, or repurposing that can happen that could be cost effective to the ratepayers as well as help our environment for the future.
Thank you, Chris. That's construction and waste, and it's Kathy.
It's a great question. It's a preemptive question. As always, I tend to take a scientific approach. I might come into a certain discussion with some ideas, some hypotheses, but I'm not willing to make any decisions until I hear, in this example, where we might have the most impact. We're currently having an audit done of our emissions, both on the corporate side and the community side. And there is no way I would tell you what my 2 top priorities are for climate action until I see where the emissions are occurring, because that's the data that should drive our decisions. So while I appreciate the question, ask me again in a couple of months when we have that audit of our emissions in hand.
Thank you, Kathy. Colin.
This is a really good question. There were 2 things that I had to come up with. I'm sure that like my colleagues, Tobin to my left here will be able to give you so many because she's great. That's the thing about being on council, is knowing who knows more about this than you, and I'm like completely okay with admitting that right now. But I know, okay. Oh, okay, all right. Oh, no, go ahead, yeah. So I think that there's a committee, a climate action committee, and I would like to see it develop into something really concrete where there's a plan, like the strategic plan has a lot of the suggestions that committee would make. Another thing just off the top of my head that wasn't mentioned, and I wanted to mention in the last climate question, but it was corporate and not just in general, is show of hands. How many people here heat their home using oil? How many people here heat their home using firewood? How many people here heat their home using propane? Right? With the exception of propane, the latter, the first 2, are extremely inefficient. And it would be really good to have grants available and information available to help retrofit and then leave less of a carbon footprint. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Tobin.
I'm going to try really hard to watch you and make sure I catch the end of this question. I have maybe the disadvantage, maybe the benefit of speaking as someone who is not currently on council and is learning how all of this works. I can tell you what I'm dreaming about, though. I'm thinking about this from the perspective that Georgian Bluffs is exclusive. People are moving here. We have second homes being built here. Some of our forests are highly protected already. If they're in a protected area, they will not be cut down. Those aren't the only forests I'm talking about. I'm talking about the forests on other land as well. We need wildlife corridors. We need to keep trees in all regions as best as suits new builds and new plans. So I think about the number of houses we're missing in Ontario and how our population is going up. My students could quote some great stats for you right now, but the numbers are escaping me in terms of the number of new houses we're going to need in Ontario in the next few decades and quite shortly. So as we build those new houses, can we check our zoning to make sure that we're protecting the areas that are really beneficial to as carbon sinks? Can we be aware of how many severances we're granting so that we don't lose too much land along the way of giving people their dream homes? We have to find those elusive balances. And Georgian Bluffs is well placed in that we have started developing further. I grew up around here. I watched Collingwood, and we can avoid some of their problems.
Mike Smith.
Okay, so the biggest thing I can say is building. That's where a lot of our emissions come from. We can look at reducing our minimum square footage requirements. We can go into some municipalities who've done tiny homes. They're less to build. They take less to heat. I would look at doing something like that. The other thing is our fleet of vehicles. When it allows, we can go to greener, more efficient vehicles.
I would just like to say I can't see the red flag from here.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks very much for the question. I think I'm going to say it again. I want us to use a climate lens when we make any decisions. So that first, the greatest impact I think we can have is to be really mindful about it in every decision we make. The next thing, I share my colleague Coburn's thoughts about really needing evidence and data before I make a decision. And I'm not going to just walk away from it there. I'll give you some more information. What I would say is what we need to do is have the greatest impact that we can and the most efficient. So whatever is going to give us the greatest bang for our buck, whatever is going to allow us to provide for a more sustainable future in the biggest way, that's what we need to do. And we need that information to find out what that is before we can really land on it.
Thank you, Ryan. Rick.
Thank you. Everybody's basically said the same thing. I mean, it's a no-brainer that today we can start by doing fleet modernization, and we can look at solid waste management. Those are the two things that jump off the top of your mind. But you shouldn't be knee-jerk reaction and jump both into those thinking that's the end-all to be-all until you have the data in front of you. I do agree with that.
Thank you, Rick. Dwight.
Thank you. I'm going to make this very simple. We have a tremendous, efficient climate action committee in Georgian Bluffs. Greene County has an excellent climate action committee too. There's where I think we need to work together to make everything work. Work both together with the upper and lower tier together. Let these experts tell us how is the best way for us to proceed.
Thank you very much. And Sue, you'll be next there.
Two things that we're already working on. Number one is the biodigester, looking at what's the best solution for that for both municipalities, Chatsworth and Georgian Bluffs, and we have no idea what that's going to be. Staff are currently working on a report to come back to tell us what's the best solution there, but I think that's certainly a big impact for climate change. The other is the Climate Action Committee. We have some residents on that committee who are scientists and have the expertise to guide us in a plan that will carry Georgian Bluffs forward for a lot of years. So I think we wait and see what that plan comes out from that group. Thank you.
That leaves us with Scott Gosh, you're going to get the last one. No, you won't. I won't.
You can have the last word. Something like this, that when we start to talk about the environment, we start to talk about climate change like this, everybody seems to think that we have to spend all this money on it. Why is it the only way we can make action or make changes and protect the environment and protect the climate is to just start digging into our pockets, start spending money? There's things that the township can do every day. There's things that we can do all the time, right down to our development. Why, like we had commented on this earlier, why can't we make it more feasible for development within the area and give them those incentives? We have the power within planning and development to give people the incentives within their homes and everything every day on things we are doing anyways to make those changes for climate change. Now, I do agree that yes, you need the data. If we have to spend money, you're going to make a difference on the climate, you're going to have to spend some money, and you're going to have to look at it very, very closely. But without the proper data, we're going to do what we can been continually doing, and I've seen at government levels, at all levels, right up to federal, is we're throwing good money after bad. We're not actually spending money and making a change on climate, we're just making it look good. So let's get the data, figure out what we need to do with it, spend the money responsibly where we can actually make a change, but most importantly, the things that we do every day in this township, we can make it easier for not only the people within the township, the way we operate, but for the people, the residents and everything, to make a difference every day on things they do every day. Development, all those kind of things, we need to change the way we do it. And we're not going to make any difference on the environment unless we actually make those changes. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, everyone. All of the candidates earlier confided in me that they're willing to stay until midnight to answer your questions individually. So do definitely come in. I do want to say that this has been a marvelous exercise in democracy, and not the least because you folks have been so wonderful. You've submitted great questions, far too many that we can deal with, and I'm told that Ken is going to assemble the balance of the questions into something that each of the candidates can take with them. I want to thank all of the candidates for putting their names forward and running. Believe me, I've worked on elections. This is a marvelous thing you're doing. It behooves me to suggest there is an organizing committee, and I wasn't on it. And so we have to thank the IVDAARA. I'm not going to make the mistake of trying to interpret that anagram right now, or whatever, for organizing the event. And there should be a video available provided there have been no glitches, on the website of the IVDAARA shortly. Thank you all for coming, and remember, these guys are at your beck and call for the next 4 hours, 3 hours.